It's the Believe in Texans podcast brought to you by FanDuel. I'm here with former Texans player Cecil Shorts. And Cecil, the big injury news this week so far that we know of is that Cade Stover, the tight end, is going to be out for, I'm guessing, at least a few weeks, but at least probably this week, at least with some kind of a hairline fracture in his foot.
Bro, you know what? He was the leading receiver this week when it comes to receptions, wasn't he?
Was he? Did he have the lead? I lost track. It was just
he had the most receptions out of everybody.
So many guys with minimal, minimal receptions that I wasn't really. You know what? Real quick, yeah, we went back through and I looked at other than the Bills game last year, when Nico only had 2 receptions, but he got injured right after that second big reception. There was only one time last year where he had 3 receptions or fewer. So, and that was, I want to say, against the Ravens. So Nico Collins it's not like Nico had 10 receptions every week last year, but like the tight ends are theoretically going to be a big part of this offense. The thing I was kind of surprised by was that the Texans were in 3 wide receiver formations, 11 personnel, 80% of the time this week. And, you know, you and I talked about how many condensed formations they were in. And watching on TV, I'm thinking, like, you see big bodies in there. And I'm kind of thinking that it's 2 tight ends a lot of the times. But a lot of times it's just, hey, Jaden Higgins is a big guy with an 80 in his number, and he's down in the core. But for whatever it's worth, it's not like they had a great offensive performance last week, but being down a tight end might not necessarily disrupt their mode of operations. But that's also, as we're thinking, we'd like the mode of operations to look a little crisper this week.
Yeah, I don't think it will affect it too much. I need to go back and watch to see how much Cade got in the game compared to Schultz, if it was just 7 personnel left 80% of the time, right? But Cade, one thing Cade does do, and we talked about this in preseason, he blocks his butt off.
Yeah,
he can block extremely well. He led the team last week in catch. I think he had like 4 or 5 catches, like 20-something yards, nothing crazy. But he's just reliable. He only had 4 or 5 targets. So he's a reliable target in the right space at the right time. And him and CJ, they played together at Ohio State. So there's some type of connection there, a trust there between the two. So him being out won't be a huge deal, but at the same time, that's somebody that he trusted that had 4 targets and 4 catches. Does that make sense?
Right.
My question would be, okay, Dalton would be the main guy. No surprise there. Who would be the backup to take over Cade's spot?
And that's where I think Jakob Johnson, the fullback, is capable of playing tight end. Obviously, British Brooks has played some tight end, and I'm at this point, I'm cool with an experiment of having British Brooks as a running back if you want to try to see if somebody can bring a little bit more oomph. But he can also play fullback. He can also play tight end. The guys on the practice squad are Harrison Bryant, who they traded for at the end of camp. He's got experience he's a utility player type of tight end. He's been a backup his whole career, but he can block. And then Luke Lachey, I think of those two, Luke Lachey, the draft pick from this year, I'm guessing it would be Harrison Bryant if they do bring up a tight end. But I think the other part about the injury report so far that's encouraging to me is that D'Amico, it's not an official injury report yet because it's a Monday night game, but we didn't hear anything about Derek Stingley. Haven't been any reports that he's any more banged up than he was. And then, not that Nick Chubb looked like he was injured at any point, but I kind of want to treat him with kid gloves right now. Nick Chubb, as far as we know, didn't sustain any injuries. And D'Amico actually said on Texans All Access that they want to get Nick Chubb the ball more this week.
I was going to say, like, him having only 13 carries and 60 yards, that's pretty darn good, that ratio there. But I will want to see him get more catches, and more touches, excuse me. I think they were being smart about it, like kind of moving him up as he goes along, because you want to take care of him. And if he's showing what he showed, which was positive yards, being able to move the ball, move the chains. He had one almost explosive run for about 14 yards on a second down or something like that. He looked good. So if he can, he's a horse, man. He's just thick everywhere. Like, he just looks apart. But if he can get him rolling, going downhill, that can open the offense up a lot.
Well, he still has that strength. You know, I don't know if he has that burst anymore, but you can see he has the vision, and you can tell looking from the end zone copy, it's just different with him versus the other guys. When everything's a little bit muddy, he just has that feel for when to cut back against the grain and when to do all that. I mean, he's Nick freaking Chubb. It's weird. Isn't it strange that I just caught myself this week when on the morning show when we were talking about it. it's just weird to be talking about him the way we are, where it's like, hey, he looks pretty good, might be coming along. And then you remember, oh, yeah, it's Nick freaking Chubb.
He was special.
Yeah. I mean, and honestly, everybody out of Cleveland said just such incredible things about him. Like, what a good guy he is, what a great leader, and what a, like, just leading by example and all that. But you think about, there are a lot of guys that would have an ego if they were in the situation he's in, you know? And I know there's a lot of, and maybe justifiably so, that for him to sign to a team where Joe Mixon was going to be the guy, unless maybe he knew something more about Joe Mixon's injury than we did. I just like that he's kind of coming in here with a blue collar approach, and I think they can do some more good things with him. The odds for the Bucs game, we'll get into the Bucs game a little bit earlier. Right now, has the Texans as a 2.5 point underdog. FanDuel has the Texans as a 2.5 point underdog at home. The one thing that we haven't seen yet is that Texans pass rush at home. Obviously, this is only the second game of the year, but I'm optimistic that that's really gonna show up this week. D'Amico had partly blamed the pre-snap penalties for not being able to get the ball to Nico. And he said the emphasis this week is going to be on tempo, getting in and out of the huddle. Here's D'Amico talking about that.
Me is just our tempo, right, in and out of the huddle, right? We got to get in and out of the huddle quicker so we can get to the line of scrimmage so we can operate and make sure we got checks and things we have to make at the line of scrimmage. Well, to make those checks in the proper manner, right, we got to get out with some urgency. So the urgency piece from everybody has to pick up from the offensive side of the ball, right? The urgency picks up, and we'll be able to operate cleaner when it comes to pre-snap and post-snap.
So when I'm listening to that, I'm trying to think of it through a fan's perspective and then also through a former player's perspective, where I think if I'm a fan and I'm hearing they need to have more urgency, or as D'Amico said, they were lollygagging around, I think my first instinct is like, what are these guys, lazy? What, are they not working hard enough? And I'm curious about you from your perspective, because offense is a whole different deal than defense, especially week one on the road. That being in a game environment on the road with the noise in a new offense, like what are the challenges early in the season when it comes to getting all the motions right, getting the alignment right, all that?
I think it's just the newness of it, right? And understanding what to do with 80,000 people watching you, your full speed in the game counts. And to be honest, they haven't done it a lot in the preseason. So to do it a lot in the regular season versus a really good opponent, it puts pressure on them. And the fact that he mentioned that they need to get to line of scrimmage faster makes a lot of sense, because in practice, there's no necessarily rush to get to line of scrimmage. In preseason, there's not necessarily rush, right? But in the regular season, to see what CJ needs to see to be able to call the line, to slide the protection, to check the heights, whatever the case may be, or check out of a play, getting to the line of scrimmage quicker just helps CJ out, right? It helps him call the right protections, the right hot reads, the right checks, the whole nine. But I don't fully blame that for Nico not getting the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The play call is the play call. You feel me? So he gets the play call in his ear before he goes out there. Even if they don't check, there should be plays that's diagnosed for him to be able to execute and get Nico the ball still.
This is where I'm going to try to spin a negative into a positive, because, last year they had these same issues where, they were seeing a lot of cover two. They were saying they're taking away the deep ball or trying to take away Nico, and yet Nico was still producing. I'm gonna take a negative, which is Nico's 3 receptions in the game, and say, all right, but last year when they would try to take away the deep ball or try to take away Nico, they weren't exploiting the run game. They weren't exploiting underneath or going to other receivers. So in the long view, if they're doing a better job of distributing it equally and not just waiting on Nico to come open or seeing what happens, that if coverage dictates it, they're trying to exploit other areas of the field. And it didn't work out in that game. But if that's the process, I'm cool with it as long as they start showing results.
No, I'm with you. I think we need to see results on Monday, though. I want to see the offense get going quickly, because you can't go 0-2. That's not a thing. You need to make sure you're rolling. I'm with you. If he's going to be not the decoy, but they're taking him away, then you're having other options in the run game as well as the short and intermediate game with other guys.
You'll appreciate this as a high school coach. Honestly, one of the things I'm most impressed by some of the high school programs, and especially in like Texas football compared to upstate New York football, it's a whole different deal of high school football than where I grew up. It's that, like, the guys that they break the huddle and they're sprinting to the line of scrimmage and everything's boom. And like, it's that discipline. Obviously there's a lot more going on in terms of assessing the defense in the NFL, but it's always, as you know, in coaching, it's always back to basics. And if you don't have those basics nailed, you just can't operate smooth and clean.
It's honestly, no matter how complicated the game can be from an X's O standpoint, it always, as you know, it always comes down to fundamentals.
Yeah.
It always comes down to the smallest of the details of things that if you do these things right, the everyday things, big things can happen.
So I kind of put that in the category of very fixable issues with the offense. I've got some individual players that I'm a bit concerned about, but on the offense overall, I think there's some fixable issues. On the defensive side of the ball, as we said on Monday, it's hard. I'm not like trying to crush the defense or anything. They allowed 14 points in the game, but the play action was an issue, and that's where they were most susceptible. The Texans loaded the box more than Sean McVay had ever seen in his entire time in the NFL. So like they were aggressive, but on those play action plays, the Texans were too aggressive. And this is D'Amico talking about what the issue was there.
Goes back to us on defense. Main thing was just eye discipline. Right? We didn't play with great eye discipline, so they made plays when our eyes were not in the right spot. We're looking in the backfield, they're throwing the football. Guess what? The guy's going to be wide open. So that's things that we control.
Yeah, and the only thing that I'm always a little bit concerned about with the Texans defense is that they're so wired for violence, and it's awesome to have guys that care about the run and stopping the run more so than just getting interceptions or anything. But it's always just, okay, how do you tamp that back a little bit? Like, how do you, especially in situations where it's 3rd and 8 and all right, I really got to not bite on play action. I think I'm optimistic that they'll fix that. It's just that it was an issue last year at times too.
Well, let me ask you this, Seth, because you've been on the defense side of the ball. Is it fixable, or is it like is it an easy fix? Like, hey, just have more eye discipline, or is because they're wired
right
to attack. They're wired to be violent. So as soon as they see a run, they're coming downhill, right? Is that an easy fix, or is that something that's going to take a little time?
I think in a lot of respects, I think it's harder. I think the biggest challenge is for Jalen Petrie, and because he doesn't have the physical skills to recover in pass coverage, so he's got to be he's got to nail it. And he can't guess wrong, because if Puka Nacua gets a step on him, that's pretty much over. So I think it's the biggest challenge for him, perhaps. I think CJ Gardner-Johnson had a couple moments in the game where he was maybe just a beat late on with his body positioning or with a step before he, turned to the deep receiver. So, and which you expect, I think, out of a guy that missed most of training camp and hasn't had any live snaps in preseason games. And so it's not like CJ Gardner-Johnson was way out of position or anything, but I think he's going to be more dialed in now that he's got that game experience in him. Kamari Lassiter, I think there's a lot of, it's frustrating for me, and I start turning into a grumpy old man when nobody plays huge amounts of snaps in the preseason. And then you show up in week 1 and everybody looks a little bit rusty. And some of those things like eye discipline haven't really been tested. And I think the Texans' eye discipline was tested much at all versus this Texans offense when they were practicing. So I think it's something that definitely gets ironed out. They need to be better than they were last year. But again, they allowed 14 points. They could have almost allowed 21 or definitely 17 points, but they did what they do. They came up and got a turnover at the end there. So I'm not. Just like we've said with everything else so far, I'm monitoring it. I'm monitoring the situation.
Okay, I'm with you. It's just curious. Now, let me ask you this. CJ in coverage, Gardner-Johnson, do you like him in coverage more than you like Jalen Petrie?
Yeah, I think that's where I think things can get interesting. And they played him up in the box a lot in this game. And I think it's pretty easy to swap out at times where, I saw a couple times. I like they had one wrinkle where it almost looked like Jalen Petrie was traveling with somebody in motion, where the quarterback might have thought that it was going to be Jalen Petrie manned up, but then he dropped out. And these are the kinds of things you have to do so that quarterbacks can't just dial up I've got Jalen Petrie manned up and now I'm going to take advantage of it. So I think that a combination of maybe CJ Gardner-Johnson at times when you need somebody in the slot. Maybe you bring in Jalen Petrie played 92% of the snaps, so they are mixing and matching a little bit. it gets a little bit more complicated, and can they handle that? But I did like a little bit of the deception where, 10 years ago when everybody started jet motioning all over the place and really getting funky with the motions, that was the next step for defenses to counteract that by duping the offense into thinking like, oh, okay, you're going to send somebody in motion to think so I can tell if it's a man or not. We're going to make it look like, yeah, I'm tracking you in man coverage, but then we're going to drop back into a zone. So I think there's recipes, or there's methods, there's things they can do to counteract it. And then another big one too is just, I think, look, Derek Stingley wasn't himself after that injury. He was getting up after a lot of plays. He was really limping afterwards, and he's not a dramatic dude that's going to play it up. So I think his ability to mask some of the coverage issues by other guys in the defensive backfield, I think they'll get it. It's just it was week 1, and they just got to get a little bit better at it.
What was it, a hip? Was it a hip or a rib?
Yeah, it was that first. It looked like it was his hip. Yeah. I had to listen to the first series on the radio, and then I was watching on the All 22, and I didn't get a really good shot. Like most of the people watching or listening to this had a better shot watching on television than I did. But Henry To'oTo'o was involved, and Henry To'oTo'o he's a friendly fire risk, man. He's going to come up, hit everything and anything and everything.
I mean, I've seen it live. That's exactly what happened. It was friendly fire.
Yeah.
Right? But I just didn't know if it was his hip or rib or just back or whatever it was. But he wasn't himself. He wasn't himself. And I think we'll see better of him. I mean, with the Bucs coming up, you got some solid receivers, so we need the best of Derek Stingley coming this week.
Yeah, the O-line shuffle would be the other. This is the one I'm torn. This is where we turn over from easy fixes to potentially more difficult fixes. Is that, man, okay, Ariante Ursery had some very, very welcome to the NFL moments. Like we talked about Jaden Higgins' one welcome to the NFL moment. Ariante Ursery had a bunch of them. And when I go back and watch after the game, CJ, way more than I realized, did do a great job of turning some plays that would have been disasters into, he got rid of the ball quickly, sometimes for receptions, sometimes for incompletions. But there were a few times where Ursery got beat real quick. I'm just curious, if Ed Ingram is healthy, do they move Ariante Ursery over back to left and he's starting? Or do they look at it and say, well, look, Cam Robinson played a better game, not an awesome game, but a better game than Ariante Ursery. Like, who are they comfortable right now if Titus Howard's at right tackle? Do they go back to Ursery at left tackle, or do they start Cam Robinson at left tackle?
Is Cam, has he not played right tackle? I thought he played some right tackle in preseason.
He did in the preseason, but he's played very, very little in his career. I want to say 0 in his career, but very, very little. And I wonder if, he's just an older veteran guy, and they figure that Ursery's more malleable at this point. I get it. I get offensive linemen needing to be versatile. I get really nervous with rookies, man, because there's so many things they're trying to figure out.
I don't like it. I just want him to focus on one thing. So even if it's like, okay, you stick him at right tackle, let him play right tackle for the long haul. Let him be that guy. Now, I think, honestly, you want him to be your left tackle from what we've seen in preseason and training camp, all that stuff, right? You drafted him in the second round. But I just want him to stay in one position. I'm with you. Like, when you do a multitude of things, now his brain is working. He can't master the one thing he's trying to do. Especially as a rookie, you got to master that one thing, then go to the next, But first, and those guys, they came at him a multitude of times.
Yeah,
a lot of times, it was simple.
No, it was just, I'm coming at you. And what I worried about with Ursery is in college, you let guys get into his body a little bit, except this time it was Byron Robinson and Jared Verse, and they got into his body and they took him back, or they speed rushed him a few times. He did some good things. There's going to be hiccups with him, and I'm still very, very optimistic about him. It's just this defensive line for the Bucs, not as good. They've got Vita Vea, yes, very, very good, and they've got some good players, but they don't have as many studs across the board as the Rams did. Right now, the FanDuel has the over-under on points scored by the Texans at 22.5. I'm feeling between a combination of maybe using Chubb more consistently and then also figuring out a way to get things right with Nico, that I'm leaning towards the over on that, but I still haven't watched a bunch of the Bucs yet from last week.
Ooh, the over. I'm not sure. After last week, no touchdowns. No, I'm with you. I believe there'll be a lot of improvements this week. Monday night, big game. Guys will be excited. Nico plays well. Not Nico, but Nico plays well. But CJ plays well in the big lights.
Yeah.
When the lights are on, the team kind of rise to the occasion. So I expect them to score. I would go over 22.5.
This is the part that might give me a little bit of pause here. Here's D'Amico. Now you think about what happened this last week where they played a lot of exotic coverages, as CJ said, in that game versus the Rams. This is D'Amico on the challenges that the Buccaneers defense presents.
His philosophy, he's going to bring a lot of exotic pressures. There are going to be pressures from safeties, nickels, like everybody's coming, and you don't. They do a really good job of disguising it. So we just really have to do a great job as an offense when the picture changes.
Yeah. So when the picture changes, and that the Rams did a good job of that. We were watching the sack by the safety in the game on Sunday, and there's I think multiple things that could have gone wrong there. My first thought in watching that was, all right, if CJ had anticipated the blitz from the left, then the move would have been to hit Nico on a slant. It would have been an extra target for Nico. But he's looking off to the right, and he either didn't anticipate the blitz or he thought the protection was going to handle the blitz. And that's where I just don't know. Was that a miscommunication in protection, or was that CJ's error on that play?
That's a tough one. Me and you both looked at it at the same time pre-show. I think it was kind of the protection.
Yeah.
Confusion from either the center and left guard on that particular play there on the goal line, or in the red zone, I should say, or even Dare, right? So I think Dare went to the inside block where he probably should have went to the outside if the guard and tackle and center were kind of on the same page. So that's just a tough thing that they got to work the kinks out. But that's twice in a row. I think it's going to be every week, right? That you're going to see exotic defenses. It's a copycat league. So the Texans struggled with the week one. Hopefully they can get together week two, because teams are going to take – I've been in locker rooms. I'm sure you've been in locker rooms like, hey, we're playing this team and they struggled versus this, so we're going to do a little bit of this. We'll do our stuff, but we'll also add a little bit of this to see if they can handle it again.
Yeah, and that's where, Bowles is a guy that he's a little bit like D'Amico, in that I think he really very much preferred not to have to blitz a bunch. But if he doesn't have the defensive line to do it, he's going to blitz. D'Amico's gotten more aggressive than I thought he would, because he has the good defensive line, but he'll release the hounds more so than I thought he would. The confusion at times up front is stuff that's fixable. And it really, I think with CJ, I think the part of being a guy that's in control of everything is also, all right, if you have time at the line of scrimmage, that's when the hard counts really help. Diagnose and hit him with a hard count and see if you get a safety to flinch. See if you get a linebacker to start showing his hand. And he just doesn't have that catalog of plays necessarily in his head yet, and the reps he's not going to be like 15th year Peyton Manning all of a sudden. It's going to take a little bit of time. But I know he's capable of doing it. It's just a matter of getting the reps.
From a D-line standpoint, or on the defensive side, obviously 3rd and short, 4th and short, you expect a hard count is coming.
Yeah.
But what would surprise you? Like what down and distance, or what time does it catch you off guard?
I was thinking the all-time best at manipulating the snap count was Peyton Manning. And I think that, and that's what he would do. He'd be up at the line of scrimmage forever. And I don't know whether it was 1st, 2nd, or 3rd down. As a defensive lineman, you're in your stance, and the lactic acid starts collecting. You start getting agitated. You're like, I'm in my stance. I'm like you're doing a wall sit or something, and it might be on the 8th or 9th play of a drive. But then regardless of down or distance, the hard count, not as Payne would use it not to get somebody to jump off sides necessarily, but just to see the defense, if they were disguising something, guys start getting antsy. So it's not even just the blitz. There might be a safety, creeped up looking like he's going to be in the box, but he starts getting antsy and starts backpedaling out a little bit, or vice versa. A guy is aligned deep and you might run a dummy. I shouldn't call it a hard count. I should call it a dummy count where, he's just coming up. He's not going no matter what. He's just seeing if he can get the defense to shift. But the worst is then if he goes into that dummy count and if you're in your stance as a defensive lineman, you got a safety blitz coming from the left. Peyton would be up there and you're like, hut. And then he steps back, and you're like, oh crap, he saw him coming, and he makes his checks, and you're in your stance, you're like, we're just screwed. We're screwed this play because he had you dialed in. So it's those little nuances, using dummy counts, using hard counts, but then pump fakes and all those things. That's again where just getting up there and having time to operate. That's I remember talking to Sage Rosenfels about this once. I was like, how often could you predict what play the defense is running? And if you really had all the time in the world? And he said, if I had all the time in the world, 100% of the time, like 100% of the time, but you just don't have that much time. So like every second that you have there, because then, hey, maybe you identify the blitz, but then maybe you got to bring on a wide receiver or a tight end to come down and block. And that all takes time. So that getting up there with 20 seconds left, and when you're on the road and there's noise and everything, it gets a lot tougher. So I'm excited about CJ learning this offense. And I think CJ's more adept to run an offense like this than Deshaun was, just in terms of Deshaun didn't come into the league as polished as CJ does on the mental side of things. It took Deshaun really until 2020 when all of a sudden everything clicked and they were doing a lot of these similar things. And he had a really good year passing the ball that year. CJ, I think it's just a question of, okay, how quickly can you accelerate it? And I'm optimistic that it's going to look better and better as the season goes on.
And it will. It just takes time, and we ought to continue to be patient. I'll be honest. The more film I watch, the more frustrated I got, because I think it's, like you said, a lot of fixable things.
Yeah,
it's things that's fixable that can be like, all right, if they just slide this way or get the ball out quickly or run black here or there or wrap or just have better eyes on defense, they'll be fine, right? And I think those corrections will come, and we'll see a lot of those corrections coming week 2 on Monday night.
I know one of our viewers, actually one of the viewers on my own YouTube channel, commented that she said that you and I made her feel a lot better on Monday's episode, which I don't know. I always feel after a loss, I always feel like after every show I do, I feel like I was the biggest jerk in the world because you're just honing in on negatives all over the place. So you and I will catch up probably not until Tuesday next week after the Monday night game, unless you want to do a pregame 3 hours before the show or something. But
no, actually, I'll be at the stadium early. But,
that's right. You're working.
I'll be working at the stadium. Tuesday will be great.
You and I are both working on Monday. We'll talk to everybody on Tuesday, man. Everybody have a great one. This is the Believe in Texans podcast brought to you by FanDuel.